Hey there, my name is Gregan, and I'm doing a challenge right now to use Zen's controls for 30 days. Well, not quite Zen's controls. All I've done is I've added air roll left to L2, which is a throttle, so it's an analog button, so you can use varying levels of throttle. I'm going to be talking through the misconceptions around this challenge, the typical questions I'm getting asked, the biggest improvements I found, what's happened to my rank, the hardest challenges so far, and my conclusion in this first 7 days of how much I think this is important to add to your game. What are the common misconceptions? So the first common misconception that I get a lot is I get asked, how do you reverse? Well, it's the same button as air roll left, it just means that when you jump, you do start spinning. So this has created some situations which are quite uncomfortable, in particular half flips, which we'll get onto in a bit, but you don't need to rebind it, you just keep it there. Another one I get a lot is it that much better? Well, I personally don't think the reason why Zen is as good as he is because he's got these controls, but it definitely has potential for some future upgrades in mechanics and movements, in particular around aerial mechanics and finer movements. Maybe the slow start in and out of air rolling might have this extra control effect that we don't know about, because as far as I know, Zen has only ever pushed it 100% and never really thought about using it in an analog way. So it might just be that smooth in and out of the movement that's helped him out. There's been a few comments around not being able to do it on your controller, around the slightest of presses not really allowing you to do this slight movement in the air. Maybe check your aerial sensitivity. I've lowered mine down to Zen's now because I'm getting used to that a bit more. So aerial sensitivity, I think, affects the trigger input. And then also check if your controller has an analog throttle, because there are some controllers that don't, namely stuff like the Switch controller, cheap knockoff controllers, and I think even some of the expensive controllers that you see on the market that have very different designs. They might just have digital inputs, in which case it's 1 or 0. There's no like percentage of that in the throttle. So look and see if your controller is capable of it. Other than that, I think everyone kind of understands the gist of it. So what has the biggest improvement so far been? For me, the biggest improvement I found is my understanding of throttle and the reverse button. So through this, I've been much more aware of when I used to brake before aerialing, because it means that when I jump up, I get the negative effect of having air roll left on the same button as reverse. In situations where I get too close, press reverse and then jump up, I'm often spinning in the air as I jump, so it's got me more disciplined on pressing reverse when moving around the pitch. Through this, I've been getting a lot of information through my Twitch chat, which you can check out live, is in the description below. One of the big ones for me was the fact that you can now get flip resets easier if you don't press throttle in the air, which I didn't realize before. So I've been pressing throttle as I went into it, and it lowers the consistency of it because your car often tries to correct itself as it gets close to a surface, as it would with something like a turtle. You know, when you're in a turtle, as long as you're not pressing throttle, you can stay in that turtle position. But the moment you press throttle, your car starts to turn towards the surface, so it can affect your accuracy when it comes to flip resets through that mechanic there. For me, I've not actually used air roll left yet. A few people have come into my chat and noticed that when they look at the controller overlay. Mostly it's just meant that I've started using air roll right more because I'm more aware of what this control can do. It's made me a little bit more mechanical. I'm trying to be more mechanical, but it has changed the way I move through the air because I'm much more in tune with way my car interacts with the ball. As you can see there, these kind of things were not what my free play looked like back in the day. The last thing that this has helped with is because I've changed my control scheme, I've had to change the grip on my controller, so I now use double finger on top. And it also means that I have to practice mechanics more, because if I just go straight into ranked without practicing, I often find it quite hard to hit the ball consistently, and I miss the ball a lot because that new control scheme is a little bit uncomfortable. So it's made me practice mechs more, putting a few hours in every single day. I'm doing things like the rings map, custom trainings, all these kind of things that I should have been doing before, but I'm now doing way more because of the new controls. Now, I guess the question is, how much has this affected my rank? Well, there's been some ups and downs. The main thing is I've gone down in ones, which is my tilt game mode. I tend to play it when I'm frustrated with my teammates. Recently, I've been doing it as a warm-up game mode a little bit, and consequently, I've gone down about 80 points in ones. I'll get back on ones at some point and grind it back up once I start to feel more in control. As for twos, we've had massive changes. So I've been hovering around GC3 all of this season. I got there quite quickly early on. I've been a few games away from SSL, but I had a massive D rank as I first implemented these controls, as you'd expect. Also, I've been streaming a lot of it, where I don't tend to play as well on stream, and I got down as low as 1744, which is the lowest I've been in a long time. And then 2 days ago, I did a huge session off stream, went up about 100 MMR and actually hit SSL for the first time. this season. Whether it was the controls or whether it's the increased awareness of mechanics and training that I've been doing that's allowed me to do that, I can't say right now, but I got up to SSL 1890 and then went on stream the next day and D-ranked it all away, and we're now hovering back around 1820. But I do feel like I'm playing better, I'm playing more mechanical, I can score more goals, but I've weakened my decision making because I've been more focused on mechanics. And I think in twos you can get away with the mechanics being your carrying factor a little bit more, so it's allowed me to play at a higher win rate play style that is more in control of the game. What's the biggest challenge been so far? And I'm sure anyone who's tried this out will know that half flipping is hard. It's so much harder now once you change your buttons, because typically if you half flipped, you would press reverse throughout the whole half flip and do your flip cancel on the way. But because of the air roll left, it means that you lose that control on the way back. So there's a few different methods that I've learned. One of them is just to let go of reverse as you start the half flip, and you can just do it as you did before. Another is to actually start pressing a different direction on the half flip, so pressing more to the side and less backwards. So you can sort of half flip still, but you have to almost press more sideways with the back flip and less forward, because the air roll left plus the sideways flip almost works out as a back flip, you see? And then the last method I found is to hold down normal air roll as you're doing it. And this is the one that I think I'm going to use long term, just because it feels the most consistent. I've just got to get in the habit of letting go of reverse at the right time and pressing air roll as soon as I jump off the ground. So this has been the method that I found to be the most effective, and I guess this is also the method I'll try and use when I'm doing the other awkward situation, which is when you occasionally have to reverse an aerial in the game. Most of the time in Rocket League you want to be driving forward, but there are some occasions where you do need to jump up backwards and make an aerial play, normally due to a misread, and in those situations I often jump up and lose control with the air roll left, whereas now I can press air roll as I do that and I feel pretty in control. And that's pretty much it. This has been the first week of the test. It's very hard to conclude anything just yet because I'm getting used to the controls. The main challenge, if you're trying this out, I would say, in that first week is getting used to not using air roll left in the air. The whole idea of not using reverse whilst you're off the ground to try and build up those good habits around reversing better is much more important in that first week than getting used to air roll left. For me, I now have good control of both air roll left and air roll right while I'm moving around the pitch. Like I said in the last video, I've got used to doing the Mina flip using air roll left and air roll right. I now, as I fly up, can control my car using air roll left, which I couldn't do at the start. So I'm aware of how the two different air rolls interact with my car. So we'll see how this next week, as I start to implement those into my mechanics a bit more, how that affects my gameplay. And maybe we'll start to use mechanics that Astral, Joriez, Joyo use, where they have both air roll left and air roll right, which is probably the biggest benefit I'm finding from this so far, is the idea of having air roll left, air roll right, normal air roll, as opposed to what Zen has, which is his primary directional air roll on the trigger and no access to his secondary one. So I don't think Zen is as good as he is mechanically because of his button scheme, but maybe as these weeks go on, we'll start to find that to be different. So if you're interested in trying this out, join me on this challenge. Don't feel like you have to though, because it's not as beneficial as people are starting to claim it is. I mean, Zen himself has said he didn't even realize he could do this analog input. He's always just had it on that button anyway. So don't feel like you have to do it, but if you want to, we'll maybe start innovating the world of Rocket League and change up the button scheme forever. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, and I'll be keeping you up to date every week with the things that I've learned. There you go, pal. Enjoy.